Hey beautiful women, Shakti here. How you doing? I know my lives are very sporadic at the moment. That will probably change in 2024. This has been kind of a year off for me. But every now and again I get the impulse to do a live, and today it's come. And today's theme is navigating reactivity. So this, I guess my reflection on this and my desire to share something around this has come through one of the clients that I'm working with at the moment, and one of the areas that we're exploring together is reactivity in relationship. So when something is said or done and you feel like this big tide of reactivity rising up within you, and the mind begins to tell stories and say things like, they're wrong, that's not fair, that's not true, I didn't say that, I didn't mean that. You know, so the mind is beginning to create all these defenses and justifications, and at the same time the emotional body is getting activated, and there may be anger, there may be fear, there may be sadness, there may be all kinds of emotions getting stirred. And I'm going to assume that if you're in this group, you at least are aware when you are being reactive, because at the kind of, I guess, the sort of when we're less aware, you know, we are reactive and we have no knowledge or no awareness that we're being reactive in that moment. And that's when dynamics between people and nations actually get really messy, really nasty, really quickly, because there's just a complete assumption of righteousness within oneself, and typically a projection of one's own shadows, wounds and triggers onto the other person without any awareness of what's going on. But if you're in this group, which is about waking up, I'm pretty sure you'll already at least know when you're triggered, but perhaps still find it challenging to navigate that moment in relationship to another person when things become very heightened, and sometimes perhaps quite quickly. So the first thing that I want to say to this is that we all have triggers, we all have wounds, we all become reactive. There isn't a single human being on earth who does not occasionally become reactive. So there's nothing wrong with you, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's part of being human. And actually, you know, in a way, that it brings gifts, because basically if you notice yourself feeling triggered, getting reactive, having like a sudden heightened sense of tension, anxiety, fear, alarm, distraction, avoidance, like all of these different patterns that might arise, what your body mind system is saying to you is something that's unhealed from the past is rising to be felt. So it's an opportunity, it's an invitation. So you could appreciate, you know, you could appreciate it. You could be grateful. You could say, oh, okay, something's coming up, and it's a part of me that I'm not fully aware of. It's a part of me that I haven't fully integrated. It's a part of me that's asking to be seen. It's a part of me that's asking to be felt. This is part of my growth. This is part of my spiritual maturation. This is part of my self-empowerment. This is part of my self-love. So, you know, you can look at it that way and reframe it away from the mindset of being a victim, like, oh, they're doing this to me. Oh, they're making me feel this way. That is making me feel this way. If it weren't for them saying that, if it weren't for them doing that, if I weren't in this situation, everything would be fine. That is a story, and it is not true. So the mind can look for all kinds of ways to blame somebody else for how we're feeling and how we're thinking, and that's a defensive state. And that's okay, it's natural, and it's natural perhaps to not want to feel things that feel uncomfortable, because when we're triggered and reactive, it feels uncomfortable in the body, and the sort of survival mindset will want to do anything to avoid that. Right? But if we stay in that state of victimhood and imagining that things are being done to us and that we're a victim, then we remain eternally disempowered, and we are not going to be able to claim our fullness of being, our authentic being, our more whole being, which this is an invitation to. So with compassion for yourself, with understanding for yourself, if and when you notice yourself getting reactive, and you want to change a dynamic where you get reactive, so you say something, then your partner feels the aggressive or defensive energy in what you've just said or done, then they'll ping something back, then you ping something back, and then it will just escalate, right? I'm sure that's a fairly familiar dynamic to many of you. If you want to change that, what you want to do is pull yourself back from thinking that the other person needs to change anything about themselves. So you cannot control another person. You never can change, you never can control another person, but you have the power over your own domain. You have the power to respond however you respond. You have the power to meet your emotions. You have the power to meet your energy. You have the power. So it's all here. So rather than thinking about what the other person needs to do so that you can be more comfortable, which is codependence, here's a little tip or some advice for how to navigate the next time you feel yourself getting triggered and being reactive. So you notice what's happening, and you might not catch yourself in it straight away, and that's fine, no judgment. We're all doing the best that we can with what we've got. But you notice, okay, I notice I'm going into some kind of a stress response. You can feel it happening in your body. Maybe your breathing becomes more shallow, maybe your belly clenches, maybe there's like energy moving through the body, maybe there's freezing, maybe there's heat in the face. Like, you'll notice these symptoms of agitation. So rather than tripping off into the head or just firing something back as a very quick way of defending yourself, what I invite you into is to stay with what you're feeling and sensing in your physical body, and to consciously slow down and deepen the way you are breathing. Know that a wounded part of yourself has been activated, and that wounded part requires your love and attention right now. And the way you give that is by presence and by breath and by staying with. So you do not abandon yourself. You stay with yourself. So I'm just going to close my eyes to envisage that situation if I were in it. And I am in those situations. I have been in those situations. I'm not speaking from the mind or from empty book learning. This is experiential learning. And you feel your feet on the ground. You're aware of your whole physical body. You notice where the agitation is in your physical body, because usually there's a location where you can find it specifically, like might be in the center of your heart. It might be in your belly, it might be in your head, it might be in your throat. And you go to that place and you give it your full awareness, and you slow your breath down as if you're breathing with that part of you that has been activated. And you stay with your process. And of course, this is a skill that you develop over time. And for me, as I was explaining to my client yesterday, I've been meditating for years, deeply, daily, and sort of also journeying with other teachers as well as teaching meditation. So this capacity for accessing presence and stillness is now deeply ingrained within me as a practice, but it wasn't natural. I had to cultivate it. So you can too. I stay with the sensation. I relax my body as much as I can. I notice if I'm tensing up, and I invite my body to relax, and I breathe with the emotion. I breathe with the sensation of the emotion. And I do my best to stay out of mental talk, although I may be able to identify I'm feeling fear. I'm feeling panic. I want to run away. So you can kind of identify what's going on within your inner world. So then you're staying present with the other and staying present with yourself. And you just wait until, and it might not happen straight away, there's enough stillness in your being to communicate from a place of full ownership of your inner experience. So it's not coming out as, how dare you say that? How dare you do this? You make me, that's just all projection, and it's just going to inflame a situation. What might come out instead is, I'm noticing something in me is triggered. I'm aware my heart is racing. I'm conscious a part of me wants to run away and not face this right now. So you take full responsibility for your inner experience. So the other cannot be defensive towards that. And you're able to give the other space to talk, to share, to speak from what's going on for them. And they will feel your energy. Because if you begin to puff yourself up, or in some way begin to embody a defensive, reactive, aggressive energy, they will feel it. As you calm your nervous system, as you breathe with yourself, as you stay grounded, as you allow the intensity of what you're experiencing to be here, but you're holding yourself in it, they will feel that and they will calm down too. So if you breathe with and still and calm and presence yourself, it will have an impact on the dynamic between the two of you. And if you're aware that it's just so intense right now that you can't do anything, you can't speak, you just don't have that capacity, maybe at the least you might be able to say, there's some really intense stuff going on in my body right now. I don't have capacity to communicate. I hear that you're upset. I need to take a time out right now. Okay, so you take yourself out of the situation and you go and do what you need to do to process, to move the energy, to calm, to still, to understand what is this wound that has been triggered? What is it about? Because it's always a part of you that is there for insight. It's always a part of you that is there for integration and healing. It is not about what they are doing to you. It will always be, oh, there's that part of me that gets triggered by the fear of abandonment. Oh, there's that part of me that gets triggered at the fear of rejection. Oh, there's that part of me that wants to be right. Oh, there's that part of me that gets... I'm trying to think of other examples. What are other common fears that come up? That doesn't like being told what to do. That's one of mine, right? Oh, what's that part of me that doesn't enjoy being in the energy of what feels like anger? So it's all about you. It's all an opportunity for you to see yourself more deeply, to love yourself more deeply, to integrate these lost parts of yourself. And okay, so I'm going to give you an example, real life example, because I think these can be helpful. So I'm just also, I want to do it as anonymously as possible, though I'm not going to bad talk anyone. I don't believe in bad talking people. I don't believe in that. I don't do that. That's not my nature. So I sent an email to somebody that I work with, not a client, and I work with them in a different capacity. And I was very straight in what I said, in identifying a problem and the solutions to that problem. And the person who received the email became very reactive and angry. Their reaction was anger and defense. And I felt unsettled by that, and I noticed a little bit of fear come up in me about what that could mean for our working relationship. And yet I also knew it was an opportunity, and I wasn't going to avoid it. I wasn't going to run away from it. I wanted to be present to it and just see what would come of it. So I didn't make a big story about it in my head. I just held myself in what was going on for me and carried on with life, and didn't make it the main focal point of my attention, and waited for the moment when we met. And then when we met, this person went straight into, I don't know, it felt like 10 minutes. It may only have been 5, I don't know. 5 minutes of unleashing anger. And it felt quite intense. There was no name calling. There was no, so it wasn't nasty rage, but it was anger. And knowing this person a little bit as well, I've seen them move through this pattern a few times before with other people. So I understand that it's how they are. And my response was to sit and to listen and notice what was getting activated in my body and be fully present to that, breathing with it, feeling it, allowing it. So I wasn't hiding, like probably my face was telling some kind of a story, I don't know. But I was just breathing with myself, feeling what was happening in my body, keeping my feet on the ground, and just allowing them to speak. And in the course of those 5 to 10 minutes, I didn't say anything. I just waited for them, to feel like they'd followed the thread of their, what their anger and their expression. But the interesting thing was, as I stayed present to myself, breathing, noticing, sensing, not going into, a defensive response, they began to quieten in tone of voice. They began to soften in body language. And within those 5 to 10 minutes, they'd kind of talk themselves all the way around into apologizing, admitting that I was right, offering me greater benefits in our working relationship, and expressing respect for me. So all of that came about through me being able to hold myself in any reactive sensations, feelings, or thoughts that might have come up in that situation. And I say that as someone who has typically been very triggered around anger, because my father was a very angry man and would become abusive, often psychologically, verbally, occasionally physically. So I've historically been afraid of anger, not enjoyed being around angry people, had an issue expressing my own anger in a healthy way, and sometimes imagine people are angry when they're just being assertive. So it was a real sign of how far I've come to me in terms of how that worked itself out, and how I was able to stay fully present with myself and with them and be completely authentic, because then I did articulate my truth. But the beautiful thing is I was able to articulate it from a centered place, a vulnerable place, a centered, grounded, vulnerable, honest place. I think there were some tears, I think there was some vulnerability, and yet there was a strength. We don't have to be, in fact, hardening ourselves up is not strength. That is a defensive mechanism that is bringing so much tension and sort of closing off the energy, our life force energy. So I didn't close off, I stayed completely open. And it brought us closer together in that moment of vulnerability together, with him showing that part of himself and then owning, really, really nobly owning how he had been and apologizing, you know, and me gracefully accepting that and expressing respect for him. So it was a very beautiful moment. So this is something we can all do. It's a muscle we can all train and develop. And it really reaps a lot of rewards and benefits in our relationships. Any relationship, with your children, with your colleagues, with your boss, you know, whoever, with your lover, with all different dynamics, with your friends, with your family, because, you know, we all have triggers, right? So I hope that little share was helpful. If you have any similar stories you want to share or any questions you want to ask, feel free to post them underneath and I'll have a look and respond. Meanwhile, have a beautiful Sunday. I'm going to go out for a walk and somewhere nice for lunch, I think. So lots of love to you all. Take care. See you again soon. Namaste.